Welcome to this tutorial on Adobe Audition CC. If you've had any familiarity with Audacity for audio editing, then making this transition to Adobe Audition is really not too difficult. And if you do have no prior experience, you'll be fine too. I am going to say it is important to download the files if you're trying to do this with me that are listed, and to create a folder called TPOD. I have one called TPOD 2, but you're going to make sure that all of your files are in there. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one that I've accidentally recorded already. So you'll have Boom, Record, Rewind, GSFX05, and the Looperman Cosmic Effect file. That should be in your TPOD folder. That's a folder where we're going to keep all of our files. And one thing about editing in really any Adobe program, when you're doing audio or video, you have to put your files into a folder and leave them there. If you go and delete a file out of the folder, it will delete it from the actual sequence that you're editing as well. So that's kind of a bad deal. The other thing we want to do is make sure that we match workspaces, just to make it easier to find everything. I'm using the default workspace, Window Workspace Default, and if I move things around, then it might look different. So if something has been undocked or moved around like this, now it's all kinds of messed up, then you just go back to these three lines on the workspace switcher and reset it. And when you do, it puts everything back to where it goes. The other thing you're going to want to do before you start any project is go to Edit Preferences and ensure that your audio hardware is set properly. Now I'm on a laptop recording this, so my audio hardware is just kind of my standard microphone and speakers. But if you're in a lab situation and using nice USB headsets, be sure this is set to your USB headsets. If it says nothing is detected here, then either you might need to restart your computer or try a different set of headphones. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and we should be ready to roll here. There are two different views in Audition. There's waveform view and multi-track. Multi-track is where you can deal with multiple sound files all at the same time. That's where you would assemble something. If you're just recording something by itself, you can use the waveform view. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of switch back and forth. In my instructions, I have you to create a new sequence here. So we're going to go to File, New, and Multi-Track Session. So we're in Multi-Track. We're going to be sure to browse for that TPOD folder so that everything is in one place. Now I've got mine on a hard drive, so let me find my file and save to this location. But you want to be sure that all of these things are in the same place. So I've selected my TPOD folder, and I'm just going to call this TPOD as well. Now, you can choose templates for various things in Adobe, and you can see here like there's a DJ drop template and a podcast template, and since this is going to be set up for a podcast, we'll use that. But you don't even have to use a template. Templates just come in with some lines that are already labeled. Notice this one is already set to a sample rate of 44.1. I've kind of been told lately that you want to set 48,000 as your starting sample, but in here that's what it's automatically choosing, is that 44,100. So I'm going to leave it and say OK for now. So now it sets it up. And what's cool about this podcast editing view is that you can see most podcasts have like a 30-second intro and then the main part of the podcast and the 30-second outro. And you can move these markers, but they're already in there. Additionally, we can go ahead and zoom in or out on the timeline. So if I zoom up, then I can see more of each line. And if I zoom down, you can see all of the lines. So we have a host, interview, sound effects, music bed, and a master that are already in here that are just ready for us to use. So those are all in there. And right now we're seeing, like, here's 0 seconds, here's 40 seconds. If you wanted to zoom up on that, that's this other one. And then see here now I can break it all the way down into like 5-second intervals here. So that's kind of just how you move around with regards to the view and so forth in here. Now, despite the fact that we've already got this in a folder, you can't see those other files in the folder just yet. But down here in the media browser, you can go ahead and choose your file folder so that you can pre-listen to things, because sometimes you don't need everything in the folder. So it's a good idea to have your file folder open down here so that you can listen to them ahead of time. So like I can click on Boom and hear the boom sound, or I can click on this and hear that sound. Does not mean they're in my project though. This is just a media browser. This is just, instead of having to go all the way out of the program out to here to listen to things, I can listen to them straight away. All right, so we will import these in just a minute, but the first thing we're going to do is record the first clip. Now this multi-track stays open even if we switch views, but if I switch to waveform view, I'm editing only one single sound, and I'm going to be recording that sound. So I'm going to click on waveform view. It's immediately going to ask for a name. In this case, we're going to name it Ready, and if I want it to match the sample rate of my podcast, then I could go ahead and set it to 44,100 because that's what my podcast is set to. But the cool thing about Audition is even if I don't, if I record this in 44 or 48 or something else, it's gonna convert it later on anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And I believe the other one was set to 16 bits. I'm actually gonna leave it for now, and we'll just see what happens. So I'm gonna hit OK, and it switches me over to the waveform view. Notice this is now blue, and I'm just gonna record myself saying, "Are you ready?" So I'm going to hit the record button down here. I'm going to see my audio displayed in a visual way here in the middle. And always pause a little before and after just to be on the safe side so you don't miss anything. Plus, sometimes right when you hit record, the microphones make weird sounds. So I'm going to hit record and record it. Are you ready? All right. For the most part, that recording went pretty well. You do want to make sure you don't clip, which means get cut off at the top. And I think I did a pretty good job of not doing that. I'm really close on one little part, but I think it's pretty close. If you notice that you're clipping really badly, you definitely want to delete. Let's see if I can start here at the end and I'll clip on purpose. Ah! Ah! There we go. So here you can see it's clipped a lot. This one didn't clip actually, but here it's clipped off the top. Now, again, I can delete all of this extra stuff. So those little squiggles at the beginning, that was what happened just because my sound card makes a sound or something whenever I record. You can't really hear it, it's just that click. But anyway, that's why I always pause a little bit before I start talking. Now you can press the bar to start and stop on playback. But right now I'm going to take my tool here and select this area in front and press delete on my keyboard to get rid of it. So now I've got my whole part here. So I'm going to listen to it. All right, and I'm ready. So that sounds good. You can also trim by selecting the part that you want to keep, and then press Control and T for trim. And notice that trimmed off the areas that were not highlighted. So now that I've got it all set, I can go over here to my favorites menu, and I can do some favorite changes. These are common changes that you make to most audio. So they say that we should normalize the audio to -3 so that it's not clipping or close to clipping. So look down here, -3 is what's normal. I'm going to hit. So part of that goes a little higher than that. So if I go to favorites and I normalize it to -3, then it does that. And that pulled it down. Notice my waveform is not as tall now. And it doesn't really sound a lot different, but it made sure that it doesn't do that anymore. And then they say it's a good idea to remove hums. So if I go to favorites, I can remove a 60 hertz hum if it finds one. And there we go. And nothing, oh, yep, a severe error. So it didn't find it. There's a lot of times that one doesn't work. Okay. So I do try to remove hum if I can, but if not, no big deal. So anyway, those are kind of the two that I oftentimes will use. Then once we've got that, we can save it. You want to file save or Control S to save. The first time you save a file, you need to make sure you set it to your TPOD folder because it needs to be in the same place as everything else. So it's called Ready, it's saved to the right folder, and we're good. All right. Now I'm going to close this file because I don't want to have it open here in this view. And now I'm back over in my multi-track. But notice my Ready is in here, but it's not actually part of my project yet. And in order to use these in here, they need to be part of my project. So I'm going to import my Ready file in here. And you can just double click in here and go find it. But you can also drag from this media browser. So I can just drag this up in here. And that honestly is the easiest way to do those if you have your media browser opened. So I do. And in good place there. Now I'm going to create another audio file. So I'm going to create a new file for that. File new and audio file. I'm using a touchpad, so it's kind of hard to deal with there. This second one I'm going to name as World. And that's going to pop me back over to my waveform editor. And this time I'm going to say for a mind-blowing experience out of this world. Here I go again. For a mind-blowing experience out of this world. All right, there it is. I'm going to select the part I want to keep and not select this little dumb part at the beginning and press Control T to trim. And then I'm going to go ahead and normalize again to -3, taking care of any of those clips. And again, we could try the room hum. I'm not going to worry about it this time. Okay, so there's my wonderful sounding thing. I've done my favorite, and I'm going to go ahead and save this one. So File, Save As, again, making sure that it is in that TPOD folder, and it is. And I'm going to close this one out, File Close, or Control W to close, and I'm going to pull this one in too. And then we're going to drag these in so that we can actually use them on our project. Okay, so I'm going to, this is the host, this is me talking here. So I'm going to pull in, Are You Ready? And there it is. And I'm going to use this plus sign here and zoom up so we can see better, pushing it a bunch of times. Are you ready? And then for a mind-blowing experience out of this world, I will drag in after it. Now notice as I drag in, if I overlap these clips, they would fade into each other. I'm not choosing to do that right now, but just know that that is something that you can do very easily. It's built right in. Okay. Now, if for some reason we tried to bring in audio files that did not match the sample rate, that 44,100, I'm going to pull in Boom right now. Oh, I guess I have all of these already matched. But if you pull them in and they don't match, it's going to give you an error for the most part. I'm going to go ahead and pull all these in just so we've got them all in here. And if we try to drag it into here and it doesn't match the sample rate, then it's going to make a copy of it. You're going to see a second one in here. And that one then is going to automatically be modified to match the sample rate of our overall document. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pause here just to give you an opportunity to make sure that you're at this point. And then we'll start off in video 2, essentially starting with what would be number 7 on the handout, which puts us up to this point. And then we're going to start making some changes and edits to these files.